My serious car accident occurred, but my husband, a traffic police officer, went to save his first love who had fainted due to low blood sugar. A moment the phone call was hung up, the vehicle exploded, and a raging fire rushed towards me. The same thing happened in my last life. My husband hung up my call and still chose to go to his first love. However, he arrived a few minutes late, and his first love was run over and killed by a car in the middle of the road. On our wedding day, my husband's bipolar disorder flared up, and he dragged me, who was pregnant, for several meters with the wedding car to avenge his first love. If it weren't for that call of yours, how could she have died so miserably? Today, I'll make you experience the pain of being dragged by a car. On the wedding day, I and my unborn child died a tragic death. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of the car accident. I decided to find a different father for my child. Bang! The sound of successive car crashes came, and I woke up with a start. The phone still showed the prompt that my husband Julian's call had been hung up, and there were more than a dozen calls that had all been hung up one by one. His text message coldly read, "If you want to die, just die quickly. Don't act like this with me." As soon as I finished reading and looked up, the car in front of me exploded with a loud bang. The gasoline on the ground was a dark patch, and it burned up at the fastest speed. There were cries and shouts all around. A little girl had lost her arm in the explosion and was crying while holding her severed hand. I struggled to pull open the car door, that had already been deformed. When I climbed out, my foot was already twisted and deformed, and the white bone was sticking out like that. Someone next to me was making calls over and over again, but the signal in this remote mountainous area was intermittent, and there was also the danger of collapse on the steep cliff from time to time. I took out my phone and called the nearest traffic police station. The moment the call was connected, laughter came from the other side. "I won the bet. It's sister-in-law. Give the money to all of us." A group of people were joking and laughing for a long time before they were willing to listen to me. "Is that Lucas? There's been a serious car accident here, and a car has already exploded." After I finished speaking, the laughter on the other side became even louder. "Sister-in-law. I have to say that my brother is a master at prediction. He guessed your words exactly. Whether this car accident is serious or not, the first thing you should contact is the ambulance, not us traffic police. You're just checking up on Julian, aren't you? My brother has gone to save Mia. The situation there is more serious. Sister-in-law, Mia has no relatives here. Don't keep being jealous for no reason." My hands were shaking. In my last life, I called Julian. Julian led the traffic police team to clear the road ahead so that the ambulance could come in. Now I knew that Julian wouldn't answer my call, so I called the traffic police station. I never expected to be teased like this. I'm serious. I'm not joking with you. The situation here is very serious. It's very difficult to clear the road without the traffic police's command, and the ambulance can't get in at all. I wasn't joking. The road here was steep, narrow, and there were many large trucks passing back and forth. If there was no traffic police to clear the way, there was a high possibility of a secondary car accident. But the laughter on the other side became even louder. "Sister-in-law, if you have a conflict with Julian and are throwing a tantrum, don't joke about a car accident. If there was really something wrong, why would we only receive one call from you?" As he said that, he hung up on me. The little girl behind me pointed at my belly. "Auntie, are you having a little baby?" I'm already 5 months pregnant. My abdomen was already aching faintly, my 2 feet were severely deformed, and my hands were also injured in the explosion, bleeding profusely. The gasoline was still flowing continuously, and some people were too scared to speak. After all, those who passed through this route were basically families on self-driving tours and young people, and they rarely had experience in dealing with such things. I made one last call to Julian. He answered it. But the first thing he said was, "If you want to die, just die. I don't have time to take care of you." The moment he hung up, the gasoline flowed to my feet, and the spreading fire instantly enveloped me and the little girl with the broken arm. My phone rang. Daphne. Are you on the Ring Mountain National Highway? What's the situation there? Are you okay? Hearing the voice, I glanced at the phone's contact note. I found that there was only a phone number, and I wasn't very familiar with it. In the few seconds of my silence, the person on the other side said in a deep voice, "I'm Henry." My mind went blank for a moment, and then I said to him with a bit of grievance, "Captain, I'm on the National Highway. There's been a car accident here. My car just exploded, and the situation is very serious." Henry said in a cold voice, "Don't be afraid. Don't forget that you were also a member of the fire brigade before. Deal with the problem calmly and don't act rashly. We're coming." The moment the call was hung up, I felt as if I had been instantly recharged. Clenching my teeth and using all my strength, I said, "Each of you has a self-prepared car fire extinguisher in your car. Hurry up and bring it to put out the fire. We can't let the fire situation get worse." As soon as I finished speaking, the college student closest to me rushed over with a fire extinguisher. Just as the fire here was put out, rocks from the mountain ahead began to roll down continuously due to the car explosion. My arm was completely burned, and there was a continuous flow of yellow pus. At this moment, the scene was in complete chaos. We couldn't get out, and no one could get in either. What's wrong with the traffic police brigade? They don't answer the phone. Without their command, the cars in front are blocked, and the cars behind can't move. The situation will only get worse and worse. Exactly. When I called, they said I shouldn't be joking and hung up on me. Everyone's emotions were getting more and more intense. There were continuous small flames emerging from the exploded vehicle next to us. The crucial thing was that there was a forest right beside us. If the fire reignited, the so-called car fire extinguishers in our hands would be completely useless, and we could only wait to die. Just as I was thinking about this, my phone, which had been silent all this time, rang. I thought Henry and the others had arrived. But as soon as I answered, it was Mia's voice on the other side. "Sister, brother Julian said something happened to you. Are you okay?" "It's all my fault. I'm not in good health but still came out to play. I fainted in the middle of the road due to low blood sugar on the way. If it weren't for brother Julian's arrival, I can't even imagine the consequences." She was getting happier and happier as she spoke, and I could even feel her joy. And Julian on the other side said to her very affectionately, "You little fool. You must pay attention next time, okay?" There was a smooching sound as if the two of them were kissing. Then Mia said shyly, "Don't do that. Otherwise, sister will be unhappy again later." Then she seemed to have handed the phone over. "Brother, don't you want to say something to sister? It seems that there's been a very serious car accident on her side." As a result, after taking the phone, Julian only said one sentence, "Do you know that making a false police report will send you to jail? Daphne, with such a serious car accident, you can still chat with me here. Why didn't the car explosion kill you directly, along with that little bastard in your belly? What are you saying?" Julian snorted coldly and directly said, "Mia told me that on your birthday, when I went to accompany her, you were unhappy and called Henry from your squadron to accompany you. Then you got pregnant. Don't you know whose child this is? Henry? On my birthday, didn't he say he was working overtime? And Henry didn't come at all." Before I could say anything, my phone ran out of power. And at this moment, the worst situation happened. The gasoline leaked into the nearby forest. It was late autumn at this time. The dry branches caught fire with just a gentle touch of the flames, and a whole area was set ablaze. As a former firefighter, I instinctively picked up the fire extinguisher on the ground and rushed forward. As a result, the big fire surged back. "Daphne, get out of the way." Henry led the firefighters and quickly dealt with the fire situation. When my former teammates appeared in front of me one by one, I felt a full sense of security in my heart. Just when I thought everything was going to be okay, I suddenly saw more and more blood under me. It was as if a sluice gate had been opened all at once, and all my blood was flowing out. The accompanying medical staff rushed towards me when they saw this. I fell heavily to the ground. At the moment I fell, the traffic police team just arrived. Lucas rushed to my side when he saw this. No, sister-in-law, you really weren't joking with me. I really didn't mean it. It was what Julian said. What should we do now? What should we do, doctor? Henry pushed Lucas aside with a shove. Send her to the hospital. What else can we do? If your traffic police team had come earlier, our fire department wouldn't have been unable to get in for so long. I don't know what your captain is doing. Henry carried me on his back all the way to the ambulance and accompanied me to the hospital. When he carried me and rushed into the emergency room, he was suddenly grabbed by Julian, who appeared out of nowhere. Daphne, you're so shameless. I'm not even dead yet, and you're already hugging and clinging to your captain. Don't play dumb with me. Wake up. Tell me what's going on here. Mia beside him laughed and said, Sister is so lucky. She's in a relationship with brother Julian and is also having an ambiguous relationship with her superior. I'm not as lucky as sister. I almost died alone in the middle of the road. Julian held on to me desperately. The medical staff had already pushed the bed over, but he was still questioning my relationship with Henry. Finally, the doctor had no choice but to say directly, Sir, if you don't step aside, both your wife and the baby in her belly will be saved. As a result, Julian roared at the doctor, It better be like that, the child she had with another man. Before Julian could finish, Henry kicked Julian aside, handed me over to the doctor, and then directly dragged Julian away. In my drowsy state, I saw Julian and Henry fighting each other. Mia stood between the two of them. After being punched hard by Henry, Julian held her in his arms with great distress and went to find the doctor. At that moment, I didn't know how I felt. I just thought it was ridiculous. I was in emergency treatment for a full 2 hours. When I was wheeled out of the operating room, only my teammates from the fire department were by my side. The doctor asked several times where my husband was. My teammate stammered and said, He took me and left. He said there was no need to contact him unless you were dead. There was no need to contact him unless I was dead. What great concern my husband had for me. In the following days, I underwent countless treatments in the hospital. Countless times, the doctor told me that the baby might not be saved. From insisting at the beginning to despair in the end, during this period, Julian, the father of the child, never showed up. If it hadn't been for the alarm that went off on my phone after it was fully charged that day, and I had opened the home surveillance out of curiosity, I wouldn't have known that while I was in the hospital, my life hanging in the balance and suffering terribly, my husband was actually hugging Mia and kissing her at home. He was applying medicine to Mia on my sofa and even kissed the back of Mia's neck. Mia was choking the neck of my cat and shouting my name. Julian beside her just smiled and glinted. When he saw my cat rolling its eyes and crying out in pain, he just said, Be careful. Don't get scratched by it. Finally, when the cat was thrown on the ground, it was twitching all over and on the verge of death. Julian walked over and kicked it aside. These scenes stabbed at my heart. Especially when I saw Mia directly pushing open the door of my bedroom at night, wearing my pajamas and walking in. I couldn't bear it anymore. Hello, I'm calling the police. I suspect that my husband is having an illegal transaction with a strange woman at home. Then I changed the password of my front door. Not long after, Julian's call came through. On the other end of the phone, there were intermittent sobs, and the police were constantly asking about the relationship between the two of them. She's my sister, really. I called my wife, and she can prove it. When the phone was passed to the police, Mia beside him was still seeking comfort. I even heard Julian constantly comforting her in a gentle voice. It's okay. It'll be over soon. Maybe the neighbors haven't seen you much and just got the wrong idea. It's all a small matter. But it's so embarrassing to be taken to the police station like this. I don't even have a boyfriend yet and... Julian smiled and said, Then you can think of me as your boyfriend. After hearing this, I said to the police Julian is my ex-boyfriend. He broke into my house illegally. Whatever he's doing in there with another woman is illegal. Please deal with it seriously. This house was bought by my parents for me to live in alone. Julian and I got married because I was pregnant, and since I was more than 5 months along and couldn't have an abortion, he reluctantly agreed to marry me. At that time, he said he wouldn't buy a house and would just live in mine. I didn't object either, but after living here for so long, he seemed to have forgotten that this house had nothing to do with him at all. The police confirmed with me several times before hanging up the phone. In the following days, Julian basically didn't show up. I heard that he was detained. I didn't ask in detail about the specific situation, but Julian's figure hasn't appeared in me as updates in the past few days. My situation wasn't good either. I had multiple burn injuries on my body. After repeated surgeries, the doctor had clearly told me to make a choice. The baby might not be saved. And because of my pregnancy, there were many medicines I couldn't take. I could only endure the pain caused by the burns. Henry came to visit me after he finished his work. Coincidentally, he saw me changing my dressing. The gauze taken off by the nurse still had blood on it. Henry, who wasn't afraid of anything usually, frowned slightly at this moment. There was even a trace of redness in his eyes. I suddenly remembered that when I went to resign after getting pregnant, he was like this too. He looked at me for a long time and just asked, "He should treat you well, otherwise you, the workaholic, wouldn't have resigned on your own initiative." At that time, I nodded with a face full of happiness. But not long after, Mia came back from out of town and started to have intermittent contact with Julian. Julian, who had been treating me well before, completely changed. From staying out all night to lying, to what it is now. Now that I think about it, if I had listened to Henry and hadn't resigned but focused on preparing for the wedding, I wouldn't have wasted so much affection on this man. Pay attention to getting a good rest recently. Otherwise, your wounds won't heal, and it's you who will be affected. I nodded. After the nurse took a look at Henry, they had a familiar conversation and then left. I smiled and said, "Our Henry is really handsome." After coming here a few times, he's already familiar with the nurses. As soon as I finished speaking, several of my roommates in the same ward immediately disagreed. "Don't say that about your husband. When you were in a coma after the surgery, he took care of you. He stayed by your side for several nights." Husband? I quickly explained that this wasn't my husband. The several elder sisters were even more confused. "Then where's your husband? He hasn't come even once when you're in such a serious condition? He's probably been arrested." As soon as I finished speaking, Julian's voice came from the door. "You really hope that I'll be arrested?" Julian walked in with an angry expression. He was carrying 2 big bags of things in his hand. He directly threw them in front of my hospital bed. Mia was following behind him. Their clothes looked like couple outfits. They were even wearing the same style of necklaces. He pointed at the things in front of me and said to me, "How gossipy can your mouth be? I just didn't come to see you these past few days because I was too busy, and you actually went and complained to my superior. You're carrying a bastard, and you don't even know whose it is, and you're being so picky. Don't you know that Mia has a weak body? I was accompanying her because I was worried that something would happen to her. You're in the hospital every day, and you have your Captain Henry to accompany you. What more do you want?" After he finished speaking, I slapped him. Looking at his face, I suddenly thought it was ridiculous. "You're so sure that the child in my belly is Henry's, right?" After hearing my words, Julian didn't dare to firmly say that it definitely wasn't his. Instead, Mia behind him said, "We heard everything outside. It's Henry who has been taking care of sister these days. If the child isn't his, why would he take care of sister like this? Mia, if we go by that logic, I'm afraid there might be my husband's child in your belly too. Otherwise, why do you always want my husband to take care of you?" As soon as I said this, both Julian and Mia's expressions turned ugly. They didn't get flustered and try to prove themselves, nor did they say that I was talking nonsense. Instead, they just exchanged a glance and then fell silent. Because they really had a child behind my back. It's just that this child was conceived through in vitro fertilization after Mia obtained Julian's sperm donation on her own initiative. I only found out about this shortly before I died in my last life. The reason why Julian harbored so much resentment towards me was that he lost both his first love and the child he had with his first love in one fell swoop. For him, this pain was truly overwhelming. Moreover, he didn't dare to tell others, so he could only keep it to himself. In the end, it caused problems. He vented all his anger on me. At this moment Henry directly said, "It wasn't her who reported to your superior. It was me." Henry took out a letter of complaint. This letter of complaint is a joint report from other victims of this car accident, and it's about your traffic police brigade. Take a look at it. As he said this, he handed it to Julian. After reading it, Julian said angrily, "The traffic police brigade just arrived a bit late. Since no one died, it proves that the situation wasn't serious at all." As soon as he finished speaking, suddenly someone in the ward threw a water bottle over, which hit Julian's face hard. "Your wife is burned like this, and there's also a little girl who can't use her hand. You say it's not serious. Do you have any conscience at all?" When that person was scolding Julian, I glanced at Henry. "Did you hold back the letter of complaint?" He didn't say anything, and I more or less understood. "Submit it. He deserves it." "But you?" Looking at Julian, who was arguing with others, I thought he was completely rotten from start to finish. I took out a pen and signed on the notice that the doctor had given me a long time ago, deciding to give up the child in my belly and fully undergo the skin grafting surgery. The letter of complaint and the notice were submitted at the same time. After Julian was fired, he came to the hospital but couldn't find me. After the induced labor operation was over, I was willed out. I specifically asked the doctor to compare the DNA of the child with Julian's. During the period of waiting for the result, every time Julian came to my ward, he had a dark expression on his face and took care of me very reluctantly. "If you don't want to come, you actually don't have to." After I finished speaking, Julian laughed and said, "Just because I didn't come to take care of you, you joined forces with Henry and got me fired. If I don't come now, won't you kill me? And what kind of surgery did you have? I see that you came out of the obstetrics and gynecology department." I looked at him and smiled, then told him, "Induced labor surgery." "What?" He stood up and looked at my belly. "The child, you just decided not to keep it? Didn't you say it? It's not yours. Since it's not yours, you don't need to care." As soon as Julian heard this, he directly put down the fruit he had just prepared and stuffed it into his own mouth. As if he had been waiting for a long time, he said to me, "Since you don't have the child anymore, there's no need for us to get married. Let's break up." After he finished speaking, I directly took off the wedding ring on my hand and placed it in front of him. This happened at such a coincidental time. The accident occurred on my way back to get the marriage certificate. At least now there's no need for the cumbersome divorce procedures. "You?" He looked at me for a long time. "You're not really together with Henry, are you?" I said we should break up, and you agreed right away. We had been together for so many years. Every time he said he wanted to break up, it was as easy as having a meal. After that he would use cold violence, and even tell me that he was going on a blind date, making it clear that there was no possibility for us anymore. It was me who tried to save the relationship time and time again, lowering my pride to beg him. But he never thought that a person's sincere heart can't keep being foolishly persistent, after being let down time and time again. What's more, when it came to the choice between loving him and staying alive, I chose the latter. Mia already has your child in her belly. If we don't break up, you'll be in a hurry, won't you? Don't talk nonsense. There are so many people here, and it's not good for Mia's reputation." I took a look at the people in the ward and suddenly thought it was even more ridiculous. When he said that the child in my belly was a bastard before, he said it right in front of a large group of people. Why didn't he care about my reputation being affected at that time? I smiled and held up the proof that I had someone find, which showed that Mia and he had gone for in vitro fertilization. It was written clearly on it, leaving him no room to quibble. Looking at him, I smiled and said, "You even specially chose my birthday to give me such a big gift, didn't you?" I had prepared for so long on my birthday, wanting to celebrate it well with him. But he left with just an excuse of working overtime. He left me and the cake that I hadn't even opened. However, he accompanied Mia to the hospital and successfully implanted the embryo, and Mia became pregnant with Julian's child. At this moment, when Julian looked at me, he didn't show much guilt. You know that Mia isn't a marriage advocate, but she wants a child. It's not safe to use someone else's sperm at this time, so I agreed. And nothing happened between me and her. It was just a simple favor. Why does it sound so disgusting when you say it? Disgusting? Isn't it disgusting enough? It's your business what you want to do, Julian. You can help if you like. Anyway, we've broken up, and I won't say another word. He looked at me. Don't tell others about these things. Mia has a thin skin. I'm afraid that if she's called a homewrecker and a third party, she'll have psychological problems. He really takes every aspect into consideration when he cares about others. He even directly said, "Let's break up officially after you're discharged from the hospital. Otherwise, people's gossip will surely condemn me and Mia to death." You're not that kind of person. Just take pity on an orphan without parents. I looked at him. Why should I pity you too? I was very resolute when I said we should break up. First, I posted a notice in my WeChat moments that the wedding would not be held, and returned the wedding gifts from my friends one by one. Second, I called the elders who didn't have WeChat one by one to inform them of this matter. I explained in detail why we weren't getting married and why we were breaking up. I told them one by one about the fact that he had gone for in vitro fertilization with me while we were preparing for the wedding. And just like Mia, I posted the proof of her pregnancy in my WeChat moments and tagged her. I wish you and your child all the best. After all, it's Julian's sperm, so it should be very healthy. Only after I finished all this did I truly feel happy. Henry came with a large pile of nutritional products, and the whole team to celebrate for me. He pushed my wheelchair and took me out for a stroll. Henry smiled and said, "I was wondering why you asked me to ask the nurse about these things." So it was for this. I nodded. After all, Henry is very eloquent. He managed to get such exciting news with just a few words. Under the offensive of my WeChat moments, Mia is now a veritable bad woman. But I didn't let her off either. I took screenshots of all the ambiguous things between her and Julie and that she had set to be visible only to me before. I posted one every day. Moreover, she had only set them to be visible to me, while mine were visible to everyone. In the end, she broke down and commented under my WeChat moments, asking me to delete them, otherwise she would sue me. I happily replied, "Then go ahead and sue. I'm waiting." But Mia seemed to have disappeared and never replied to my message again. Julian also deleted all his WeChat updates. Before I blocked him, the only thing he sent me was "Just you wait." I still don't know what I'm supposed to be waiting for. When Henry saw this "Just you wait," he instinctively said, "Don't worry. I'll always be here." After he finished speaking, he seemed to realize that something was wrong. He looked at the other teammates around and quickly said, "We're all here." At this moment, everyone started to make a ruckus. He unconsciously lowered his head and began to tidy up some random things. Then he said he was going to the restroom and left. Not who has the best relationship with me in the team, grabbed my hand and said, "My dear lady, haven't you noticed that Henry likes you after all these years?" I was shocked and stared at her with wide eyes. It can be said that I had never thought about this at all. After all, when I was in the fire brigade, I was a troublemaker. Every time I had contact with Henry, it was usually because I had caused trouble and was taken to his office to be lectured. Henry had always had an unpleasant expression when looking at me. I just admired someone with such strong professional abilities. But I had never thought that he would like me. At this moment, everyone started talking one after another. One of them grabbed me and said, "And this time, we weren't supposed to go to the national highway area at all. After finishing the mission, we should have returned to the team. But our captain insisted that something had happened there, called you, and was determined to go. Yeah, it's like he could foresee the future. That's why we were able to arrive there in the first place. Foresee the future? I suddenly thought that I was reborn. Then Henry? Was he also? As they were speaking, everyone took out a notebook and handed it to me. Find a chance to secretly take a look. There's something written in here. We discovered it, and Henry doesn't know about it yet. After they left, Henry took care of me until I finished my meal and was about to leave. I suddenly asked Henry, "Will you come to see me tomorrow?" He nodded and said he would come as long as he had nothing else to do. After he left, I opened that notebook. In fact, it was something he usually used to record some police situations. For some special cases, he would write them down. But later on, most of the things he recorded were about me. For example, every time I followed and recorded the duty, I would always make mistakes, and he would remind me. There was also the time when I couldn't carry the equipment when I helped everyone get it before. He would remember the time I went to get it each time and then arrange for everyone to go together. Later on, it was when I told him that I was going to get married. He wrote a sentence, "It seems that only I was reborn, and in this life, she still chose that man." This sentence had a great impact on me. The me who proposed marriage to him was the me who hadn't been reborn yet. And he had already been waiting for me for a long time? I kept reading until I reached the end. He was blaming himself, saying that he hadn't taken good care of me and that he hadn't arrived as soon as possible in the end, which actually made me suffer such serious injuries. At this moment, my tears couldn't help but fall. But then there came a knock on the door. I put the notebook away and saw Julian walk in. He looked at my red eyes from crying and said disapprovingly, "You regret it again, I knew it. You're just like this, always regretting things." He said that I couldn't live without him at all. Doing things so extremely was all to win him back. Hearing his words, I really thought that I had given him too much leeway before. I directly asked, "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be accompanying Mia to take care of her pregnancy now?" Julian looked at me, smiled, and then stretched out his hand. "Didn't I give you a jade pendant to keep you safe when you were pregnant?" A jade pendant? I thought about it, and indeed there was one. That was because I gave him a very expensive watch on his birthday. Julian had no other choice but to buy me a jade pendant because I had been feeling unwell during my pregnancy. I touched it and it was just around my neck. As soon as he saw it, he directly pulled it off without thinking. "Since the child in your belly isn't mine and we've broken up, you shouldn't be wearing this around your neck anymore." He looked at me confidently and said, "Stop crying. It's impossible for us to get back together. Mia needs me more." With that, he walked straight out. Looking at his back, I suddenly felt that everything I had done to him was too lenient. Since he said that, then he won't have an easy time either. I contacted my lawyer and carefully calculated my expenses during the time I was with him. And at the beginning, for the sake of getting married, we both put a part of our money in one card. At that time, Julian was in charge of it, and he hasn't said anything about returning it to me. I want to get it all back. My parents supported my decision. Since they were both very busy and couldn't come back, they actually entrusted Henry with taking care of me. Henry then started to communicate with my lawyer and went through some procedures with the lawyer. During this period, my phone received a hotel consumption message. I directly sent it to Julian at that time. "Do you two need to use my money to open a hotel room now? Have you forgotten that you're linked to a card with me? Cancel it now." After I sent it, Julian didn't reply to me for a long time. I was so angry that I called Henry and went directly to this hotel. The moment we pushed the door open, we were all stunned. Julian had arrived earlier than us. It turned out that this room wasn't opened by him and Mia, but by Mia and a young college student. When I saw the two of them being held down on the ground by Julian, I couldn't help but want to laugh. I could only turn around and use Henry to block myself so that I dared to laugh out loud. It was only when the police came that the matter was completely resolved. It was also because of this incident that Julian found out that the child in Mia's belly wasn't his at all. It was actually the child of Mia and this young college student. Mia still thought she was not at fault and directly said, "Since I've already done in vitro fertilization, I definitely want to use better sperm. Your doctor didn't succeed in cultivation, so I chose his." When she said this, Henry and I tried our best to hold back our laughter. We almost couldn't help laughing out loud in the police station. As soon as we walked out, Julian was so broken that he kept crying. Henry and I just hailed a taxi, but he naturally followed and got in. He sat next to me. "Get out," I said directly. He looked at me. "Daphne, we can still talk. We've been together for so long. Can we just break up like this?" "Yes, we can just break up like this." Before he could say the next sentence, Henry directly dragged him out. At this moment, I looked at Julian and said, "Oh, by the way, I have something else for you to see." I put the paternity test report issued by the hospital into Julian's hand. Before Julian could say anything, the driver directly drove away. Henry looked at me. Giving him this at this moment is really hitting him where it hurts. I smiled and said, "I also have something for you." As I was speaking, I took out the notebook and handed it to him. His expression wasn't much better than Julian's. "Don't think too much. I know you wouldn't like a rough person like me." Were you reborn a long time ago?" I asked in a low voice. He nodded. "Wait a moment, you too?" "Yes, I was reborn a little later than you." Then he told me that not long after I passed away in the last life, he also had an accident and passed away. I was curious and asked what kind of accident it was. He didn't say anything. He just said that there was an accident, and then he was reborn. He didn't say anything else along the way, as if he was lost in some deep thought. When we got out of the car, he suddenly said seriously, "If you think that the fact that I like you is a burden to you, I can stop showing up in the future." I hugged him tightly. I smiled and said, "Then you'd better show up more often. After all, I find that my heart feels empty when you're not around. But I'm not sure if I like you. Can you accept that?" He nodded. That day, after he sent me off, he went home by himself. And Julian's messages came flooding in, explaining a lot in an attempt to reconcile with me. I ignored them. Later, after I no longer needed to go for follow-up consultations, I accepted Henry's invitation and went back to work in the fire department's logistics. The days at work have never been so good. Every time Henry finished a police mission, the two of us would go to a nearby street stall to eat something and then go home to rest. It seems that we don't need to ask specifically, but we both understand that we are together. Julian never showed up again. After I managed to recover the money spent during our relationship, one sem after another, Mia was the first one to break down. It was only at this time that I realized that those designer brands Mia posted about in her WeChat moments were actually all bought by Julian. And the money Julian's pet was basically given by me. There were even a few items for which he had stolen the money from me. After I got the money back, Mia lost her composure. She would come to cause trouble for me from time to time, and Julian would always step in to solve the problem. He wanted to talk to me, but I refused. And on that day there came the good news about him and Mia. Mia posted a status saying that after such a long time, she was still with this person. Julian also sent me a wedding invitation. At this moment I felt nothing upon seeing these things. I just simply said my blessings and then ignored it all. Until that day, Henry said he received a police dispatch. And the location was exactly where Julian was holding his wedding. The time was also on that day. I went along to have a look. When we arrived at the place, we saw that young college student who had been with me lying on the ground, wearing a suit many times more luxurious than Julian's, and with a best man's badge on. Mia was trapped in the fire. Julian looked at me and smiled. "This time, I'm not killing you, and there won't be anyone desperately seeking revenge on me either." Revenge? I immediately looked at Henry. Henry didn't say anything. After they finished putting out the fire, Julian disappeared. The police searched for a long time before finding Julian, who had been dead for a long time, in a nearby lake. On that wedding day Mia had secretly replaced the best man with that young college student without Julian's knowledge. The two of them had already made up, but when Julian saw the best man he couldn't hold back and got into a fight with him. His bipolar disorder flared up instantly. That young college student was no match for him at all and was killed just like that. And he set the fire with the intention of burning Mia to death. He kept insisting that it was Mia who had killed his child. And she had also made him lose a good woman like me. When I heard this, I thought it was both ridiculous and shameless. It was always him who truly chose to give up. Later, Henry also admitted it. In the last life, after I died a tragic death, he drove and crashed into Julian, killing him, and was then sentenced to death and passed away. He said that at that time he didn't think much about it. He just felt that he had no reason to live anymore, and he couldn't let Julian escape punishment either. Henry and I didn't ask any more about those things in the last life. On my birthday he proposed to me. I said yes. Not long after the wedding, I found out that I was pregnant. This time Henry was so excited that he cried even harder than I did. I think I will be happy like this forever. After all the misfortunes have already happened twice. I'm no longer afraid. In the 6th year of our marriage, Julian's workplace allocated a bungalow with 2 rooms to us. I was overjoyed and told my daughter that she would finally have her own bed. However, Julian said coldly, "This room is reserved for Mia and the others. You and our daughter still have to make a bed on the floor to sleep." In my previous life, I had a fierce argument with him, and he finally compromised. During the few days when I was dispatched on a business trip by my workplace, he broke his promise and brought Mia home, and drove our daughter to sleep on the floor. When our daughter had a high fever and cried, saying that she didn't feel well, he was telling Mia a bedtime story and let our daughter stop breathing without taking care of her. Reborn for a new life, I made a bed on the floor and calmly said, "It's all right." After work, I went to pick up Daphne from the nursery and brought her home. When I stepped into the house, I found a pile of clothes scattered messily on the floor. In the room that originally belonged to Daphne, there were photos of Mia and her daughter hanging on the wall. The clothes that were neatly folded in the cabinet were also thrown out. The few belongings that Daphne and I had were all thrown into the yard like garbage. When Mia saw me coming back with my daughter, she pretended to be surprised. There was a sneer on her face, and she said with disgust, "Sorry, Isabella. I'm sorting out the things we don't need in the house. Julian said that I could move into this room with my child. I'm sorry to make you and your daughter sleep on the floor in the kitchen tonight." From her proud smile, there was no sign of apology at all, only blatant mockery. I glanced at the princess bed in the inner room. My fingertips were clenched tightly and dug into my palm, and I smiled sarcastically. That bed was a new style just arrived in the city, and it cost at least 50 yuan. Mia didn't even have a job. Needless to say, this bed must have been bought by Julian. Last month, I asked him to buy a 1 yuan stationery box for Daphne, but he scolded me for not knowing how to be thrifty and manage the household well. He said that Daphne didn't learn good things all day long and only knew how to compare with others at school. He earned 25 yuan a month, but he was willing to spend so much money on buying a bed and was reluctant to spend 1 yuan on buying a stationery box for his own daughter. And all this was just because that bed was for Mia's daughter. In my previous life, I never understood why Julian was so good to Mia's daughter. Just before I died, I found out that Mia was his first love, and he had always missed her. Daphne squatted on the ground and picked up her clothes. She looked at me pitifully and said, "Mom, why did Dad let others live in my room?" I rubbed her face, smiled faintly, and said softly, "We can't control what he does." Just as I finished making the bed in the kitchen, Julian came back. He was holding a fish in his hand and walked towards me with a smile. He called me an extremely affectionate name that I hadn't heard for a long time. "Honey, I bought a fish. I'll make pickled fish with chili for you and Daphne later. I remember you both always said you wanted to eat the pickled fish I made." Daphne was doing her homework at the side. He showed a long-lost gentle expression, hugged her and kissed her, and happily showed the stationery box in his hand. "Daphne, look, Dad bought you the latest stationery box. Do you like it?" I glanced away inferently, already knowing his behavior well. It was just because he felt guilty for letting Mia and her daughter move in without asking us. It was just a way of appeasing us by giving a sweet after a slap. Daphne broke free from his arms and ran to my side. She wasn't very excited. Instead, she shook her head gently and said, "I don't like it anymore." Julian's face darkened immediately. He threw the stationery box on the ground hard, and it broke into pieces. "I brought you gifts out of kindness." "What do you mean by pulling a long face, you mother and daughter? I think it's you who have taught your daughter badly." I quickly protected Daphne in my arms. Looking at him, I felt a deep sense of sadness in my heart and said self-deprecating lie, "Well, it's true that we mother and daughter are not likable." Daphne was scared by him. She carefully brought him a cup of hot water and tried to please him timidly. "Dad, drink some water. Don't be angry anymore." Julian was still angry. He waved his hand and smashed the cup in Daphne's hand, shouting, "Who wants to drink your water? You're just as annoying as your mother." The scalding hot water from the cup quickly splashed onto the back of her hand. Daphne immediately hugged her hand and burst into tears. I quickly took the ointment and applied it to her. Looking at her red arm, my heart ached and I choked up, "Daphne, don't cry. It won't hurt after Mom puts on the medicine." A look of panic flashed across Julian's face. He came up and looked at Daphne's arm with distress and nervousness. "I'm sorry, Daphne. Dad didn't mean it. Dad will take you to the clinic now." After saying that, he was about to carry Daphne on his back. I was also anxious and picked up Daphne and put her on his back and walked outside. Before we left the yard, a scream suddenly came from the inner room. "Julian, Lily's knee is skinned. Come back and help her deal with it quickly." Julian frowned and hesitated for a moment, looking deeply into the inner room. Daphne and I almost spoke at the same time, begging him, "Let's go to the clinic first. I definitely can't handle it alone. I need to pay the fee, and Daphne, she's alone. Dad, it hurts so much. Can we go to the clinic first?" Before we could finish speaking, Julian put Daphne down from his back and handed her to my arms. He said apologetically, "Lily has been in poor health since she was a child. Mia definitely can't manage it alone. You go to the clinic with Daphne first, and I'll come later." After that, he rushed into the inner room in a hurry. I carried Daphne and walked several miles to the clinic. The doctor treated her scald and applied the medicine. Seeing that it was getting late, the doctor gave us a hospital bed. This was the only time that Daphne and I slept in a bed, after Mia came to the countryside in these 2 lifetimes. In my dream, I vaguely remembered that when I was still in love with Julian in my previous life, he carefully held my hand and said, "Isabella, stay with me. I will never let you suffer in the future." He said that he would protect me from the wind and rain and would never let anyone bully me. So I followed him into his home. At the beginning, there wasn't even any furniture in his house, just a bed. Julian was very ambitious. He said he wanted to make me live a good life. He often took on some private jobs at school, such as grading test papers, organizing teaching plans, and making teaching notes. It was common for him to stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning. The first money he earned by staying up all night, he bought me a pair of woolen gloves. It cost 20 yuan, which was the money he earned after suffering from frostbite several times on his hands after working hard for more than a month. I was so touched that I smiled and told him not to waste money. He put the gloves on me and smiled like the warm sun in winter. "You won't get frostbite so often if you wear them. As long as I can treat you well, everything is worth it." Later, our life got better and better. The furniture filled the house, we moved to a bigger house, and we had Daphne. Everyone used to joke that Julian was a model husband in our alley. All this lasted for 7 years until Mia came to the countryside with her child. Julian no longer slept in the same room as me and asked me and Daphne to sleep on the floor. I thought he was unhappy because of some troubles at his workplace. I took Daphne and went to his workplace to inquire about the situation and tried to cheer him up. But I saw him smiling and holding Mia's child's hand as they came out of the nursery. He picked up her daughter and said in his arms, "Would you like Uncle to be your father in the future?" My steps down the stairs with Daphne froze immediately. My chest hurt as if it had been heavily struck, and I almost couldn't breathe. He had never shown that kind of smile to me and Daphne. Because he didn't love me, and I was not as important as Mia in his heart. So he could cruelly drive us mother and daughter to sleep on the floor in the freezing snow and give the bed at home to Mia. If I hadn't known all this before I died in my previous life, I'm afraid I still wouldn't understand how he could be so heartless to us. When Daphne's arm was scalded, I saw distress and guilt on his face. I always gave him a little chance, thinking that he wasn't completely hopeless yet. That's why I begged him in the yard to help us. But the truth was that Julian always put me first. The fact that he didn't love me or my daughter couldn't be changed just because I was reborn. His indifferent, ignoring, and apologetic attitude towards us was exactly the same as in the previous life. I hugged my daughter tightly and secretly swore in my heart that this time I only wanted Daphne to live healthily. Early in the morning, I sent Daphne to the nursery. Then I went to my workplace and told the secretary that I agreed to be dispatched to Shanghai. The secretary was very excited. "Isabella, you finally figured it out. A college student with your high education will have more room for promotion in Shanghai." In my previous life, the secretary mentioned to me many times that I would be dispatched to Shanghai, and I could even transfer my household registration there. When I went home and told Julian about it, he said to me that the secretary was lying to me, and if I went, he would divorce me immediately. I foolishly thought that he was doing it for my own good and was worried that I would be deceived. But then he told me of this news and let her seize this opportunity and get a promotion. Well, can I go there as soon as possible, secretary? I didn't want to stay by Julian's side for even a minute longer. The secretary was delighted by my awakening and told me that I could leave as soon as I packed my things, and the work unit would reimburse the train ticket. When I got married to Julian, we didn't even get a marriage certificate. Now that I think about it, it was all fate. I could just leave with Daphne. I immediately went to the train station to buy a train ticket and then went home to pack my things. As soon as I stepped into the yard, the sound of intimate whispers came from the inner room. Mia giggled and said, "Julian, you're so impatient. This is your home now. Aren't you afraid that Isabella will come back suddenly?" Then came Julian's indifferent and lazy voice, "Even if she sees it, all she can do is hide and cry. What dare she say?" I sneered. Julian really knew me well and knew that I loved him desperately. In my previous life, when I encountered such a thing, I really could only cry. I didn't stand there any longer and pushed the door open directly. When Julian saw me come back, his face darkened immediately. He stared at me unhappily. "Who let you come back?" I scoffed and said inferently, "This is my home too." Mia looked at me provocatively, slowly tidied up her clothes and got out of bed. She deliberately unbuttoned 2 buttons to show me the reddish patch on her collarbone. She raised her eyebrows contemptuously and asked, "Isabella, Julian and I were just talking about you. Where did you go last night? You went out with a child in the middle of the night. You should be reluctant to spend money on a hotel, right? Could it be that you went to some other man's house?" As she said this, she smiled and cast a glance at Julian. Julian's face turned livid, and he looked me up and down. His cold eyes seemed to see through me, and it was obvious that he had believed Mia's words. He asked me angrily with a dark face, "Isabella, do you have any sense of propriety, righteousness, integrity and shame? I really don't know why I fell in love with such a promiscuous woman like you." His cold gaze really hurt. I sneered and didn't even have the strength to refute, "Think whatever you want." After that, I went to the side of the cabinet to sort out the clothes of Daphne and me. Mia laughed harshly and leaned into Julian's arms, mocking, "Julian, I told you that you shouldn't think so much for her. It's better to let Lily go to Taohua Primary School." She glanced at me contemptuously and sneered, "What kind of good daughter can such a mother raise? It's a waste of opportunity." I paused in my action of packing the clothes. I thought what she said was ridiculous. In order to leave as soon as possible, I didn't bother to argue with her and said infuriately, "He doesn't need to think for me." Julian was enraged by my cold attitude. He came up and threw all the clothes I had sorted out on the ground and growled viciously, "Isabella, I was still waiting for you to come back so that we could discuss together whether Daphne or Lily should go to Talhua Primary School. Just because of your attitude, you don't deserve any chance at all." Talhua Primary School he mentioned was the best primary school in the whole countryside. He was a teacher in the school and had a quota for recommendation for admission. Although he said he was hesitant, he had never thought of letting Daphne go there to study. In my previous life, after he had already sent Lily to the school, he told me about this matter. He hypocritically said that Daphne was still young and there was no need to rush for school. There would still be a quota next year, and then Daphne could go. But the next year, Daphne died of illness in bed. Recalling these things, my disappointment in Julian grew deeper. Looking at the pile of clothes on the ground, it was as messy as the relationship between me and him, out of control. Mia added fuel to the fire, with a sneering smile on her face showing her sense of triumph. "No wonder Julian said that you and your daughter are annoying, not as likable as me and Lily. It seems to be true now." Julian kept looking at me with a dark face. Seeing that I didn't say anything, he roared, "I'm giving the quota to study at Talhua Primary School to Lily. You don't deserve such a good opportunity at all. Also, Isabella, I'll tell you the truth. In order to send Lily to school, Mia and I have already got the marriage certificate and transferred their household registration here." He clenched his fists tightly, his eyes fixed on me, and his expression was very complex and strange. It seemed that there was a trace of excitement and expectation, as if waiting for me to say something. I nodded and put on an indifferent smile. "That's even better. I don't need to take the initiative to mention the divorce. That's it, Julian. We have nothing to do with each other from now on." Julian's face darkened immediately, and the air pressure around him dropped. His voice was as cold as thousand-year-old ice. "Isabella, do you know what you're saying? You're almost 30, but you still think you're a child. You even mentioned divorce. Aren't you ashamed? Go out and ask, which man would want a divorced woman with a child like you?" The underlying meaning of these words was that if I divorced him, he wouldn't want Daphne. I scoffed, "Don't worry. I'll take Daphne with me when I leave." Mia hugged his arm and looked at me like watching a joke, disdainfully saying, "Isabella, you've been working for more than 10 years, and your work unit hasn't allocated you an apartment. Where can you go?" She really had the ability to fan the flames. Julian immediately associated what she said with the idea that I had another man outside. He came up fiercely and grabbed my wrist, asking viciously, "Isabella, do you have a man outside?" I sneered and broke free from his hand. I didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore. I glared at him and said coldly, "Mr. Julian, you and I haven't got a marriage certificate, and now you are in a marital relationship with Mia. Whether I have a relationship with someone else has nothing to do with you at all." After saying these words, I strode out of the door. I didn't want any of my luggage anymore. As long as I could successfully lead Julian and have Daphne by my side, that would be fine. "Isabella, you'll come crawling back to me in a few days and beg me to let you back into the house." Julian's hoarse and desperate roar resounded throughout the whole alley. If it weren't for the fact that the neighbors were at work, I'm afraid everyone would come out to watch the commotion. In my previous life, I often had fierce arguments with him because of Mia. Every time, I would take Daphne to a hotel on the outskirts of the city with grievances and stay there for a few days, and then go home because I couldn't bear to leave Julian. He never once came to find us and asked us to go home. Because he knew my personality too well. I loved him desperately, and it was impossible for me to leave him because of a little thing. But this time, I knew clearly that I would never come back to this place. After picking up Daphne from the nursery, I took her and got on the green train to Shanghai. Daphne was young, but she understood everything. She hugged me tightly all the way and said, "Mom, I want to go with you wherever you go." I kissed her cheek, and tears welled up in my eyes. I hugged her and said, "Okay, Mom will take Daphne with me wherever I go." After a day and a night on the train, we arrived in Shanghai. The secretary had already informed the local work unit fear of my arrival and said that the secretary of the Shanghai work unit, a man named Henry, would come to pick me up. As soon as I got out of the train station, someone patted me on the shoulder. When I turned around, I found it was a man. I tentatively called out, "Secretary Henry?" The man nodded, took out a handful of candies and stuffed them into Daphne's hand, and smiled gently. "Don't be so formal. You can just call me Secretary Henry in private." I looked at him. I had thought that Secretary Henry would be a pop-trilled middle-aged man. At least it took a long time of experience to become a secretary. But the man in front of me looked very young with an elegant and scholarly temperament, which made people feel an inexplicable sense of favorability. I guessed that he was about the same age as me, and he had already taken the position of secretary. I thought he must be very capable. "You must be exhausted from the journey. Let me hold the child." Henry smiled and opened his arms to Daphne. I was a little at a loss. This secretary was so easygoing. His enthusiasm made me feel as natural as that between an old married couple. "It's okay, Secretary Henry." I stammered and refused, but Daphne smiled and threw herself into his arms. "Mom, I want Uncle Henry to hold me." I laughed. This is the first time I've seen Daphne take the initiative to get close to someone. Henry took us to visit the work unit in Shanghai and then told us, "The work unit knows that you have a child with you and has allocated a house for you. Although it's not very big, it should be no problem for you and Daphne to live in." When I saw the allocated house, it wasn't small at all. Compared with the cramped dwelling in the countryside, it was quite spacious for Daphne and me to live in. "How much is the rent for this place per month?" I felt a bit embarrassed. The prices in Shanghai were much higher than those in the countryside. Although I had some savings, it could only cover the living expenses of Daphne and me. If the rent was very expensive, then we would choose a simpler room to live in. Henry smiled and shook his head. "There's no rent. You've already made a great sacrifice by accepting the transfer to Shanghai. You can live in this house permanently." Afraid that we were not familiar with Shanghai, he took Daphne and me to buy a lot of daily necessities before we went home. Daphne and I lay on the bed in the room. Daphne smiled sweetly, and her voice was full of joy. "Mom, do we have a home now?" I pinched her face and nodded with a smile. "Yes, our lives will get better and better in the future." Daphne nodded vigorously, pouted her lips, sat up and said seriously, "Mom, I don't like Dad anymore." "Let's not like him either. He only likes Lily and Aunt Mia." My heart felt a little sour. I had originally wanted to hide the matter between Julian and me from Daphne, hoping to give her a less pitiful childhood. But in the end, I still couldn't hide it. I held Daphne and wept silently. She was only a 4-year-old child. At an age when she should understand nothing, she clearly felt her father's favoritism and disdain. After the tears flowed down and there were no more traces left, I let go of her and promised with a smile, "Okay, we won't like him anymore from now on." I found a nursery for Daphne and settled down in Shanghai. The work content in the new unit was not much different from that in the unit in the countryside. With the guidance and help of Henry, Daphne and I quickly adapted to the new life here. In order to give Daphne a better life, I worked during the day and knitted wool and made handicrafts in the afternoon to sell to those who came to collect them. Although the price wasn't high, I could earn about 10 yuan a month. I could buy some milk and snacks for Daphne. After staying in Shanghai for almost half a month, I met Julian at the gate of the unit after work. During the half-month since I left him, Daphne and I had been happier than ever before, so much so that I felt the time flew by. When I saw Julian again, I felt a bit dazed, as if he were from a past life. He stood under the flower bed. I didn't know how long he had been standing there. Mr. Julian, who always paid great attention to his appearance, even had his shirt buttons fastened wrongly. He stared at the people coming out of the unit without caring about his image at all. I ignored him and was about to walk around from the side. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. He rushed over quickly and asked me with red eyes, "Isabella, do you know that I've been looking for you everywhere these days? How could you abandon your husband and come to Shanghai with your child? If I hadn't gone to your previous unit to find out your current location, I wouldn't have thought you could run so far just to avoid me." He was close enough for me to clearly see that his well-defined face was much thinner than before. There were bloodshot eyes and dark circles under his eyes. He frowned and roared, looking angry and wronged. I glanced at him inferently with an attitude of alienation and indifference as if he were an unimportant person. "Mr. Julian, if I remember correctly, I said we have no relationship anymore." When Julian heard this, his chest heaved violently. He adjusted himself to calm his breathing and his tone became much gentler. "Stop being naughty, Isabella. Let's go pick up Daphne and I'll take you home. The house is in a mess without you taking care of it." He smiled and asked me, "Where's Daphne? I haven't seen her for a few days. Has she grown taller? Has she missed me these days?" I looked at his false expression with disgust and sneered. "Julian, both Daphne and I have nothing to do with you. She won't miss you, and neither will I." His smile froze on his face immediately. He tried his best to control his anger and reached out to hold my hand in a flattering way. "Okay, stop being angry, okay? I'm sorry for letting Mia move in. I'll ask them to move out right away. Let's live a good life in our small family in the future. You and Daphne didn't get to eat the pickled fish last time. I'll make it for you again when we go home this time, okay?" His look was as if he was saying that he had already given me a way out, and if I didn't give him face, he would really turn against me. Before I could open my mouth to speak, someone held my hand and pulled me out of Julian's grasp. "Sec." Before I could call out, Henry held my hand tightly and said affectionately, "What are you talking about? Didn't you say you were waiting for me to get off work together so that we could go pick up Daphne and go home?" I immediately understood his meaning. I nodded and met his smiling eyes. I was pestered by someone. Julian clenched his fists and his anger was ignited. He stared at Henry fiercely and roared, "Who are you? Isabella is my wife. Let her go." Henry raised his eyebrows and held my hand even tighter, deliberately provoking him. "Your wife? What proof do you have? Did you get a marriage certificate? And it seems to me that Isabella doesn't really want to pay attention to you." His words were not sarcastic or mean. His tone was calm and natural, but it made Julian choke. He changed the subject viciously. "That has nothing to do with you, Isabella. Tell him what our relationship is." I was amused by his arrogant look. For him, admitting our previous relationship in front of others was embarrassing. My tone was normal, but more determined and serious than usual. "I have nothing to do with you." As soon as the words fell, I held Henry's hand and walked away. Before leaving, Henry even gave him a provocative smile, which was completely different from his usual calm and composed look as a secretary. Julian clenched his fists behind us, making a cracking sound, and growled through his teeth, "Isabella, if you keep being angry like this, I really won't care about you anymore." I left with Henry without looking back. At the corner, I hurriedly let go of his hand and apologized embarrassedly. "I was just in a hurry just now. I'm really sorry, Secretary." Henry smiled and shook his head. "There's no need to be sorry. If I didn't want to help, I wouldn't have done it." I heard something else in his words, but I just nodded blankly. "Where do you live? I have to pick up Daphne from school now. I don't know if it's on the way." I thought this was already a euphemistic farewell. Who knew that Henry, a shrewd person, didn't understand it at all? He picked up my words and said, "I'm not in a hurry. I'll go with you. I haven't seen Daphne for a long time." After picking up Daphne, she was overjoyed to see Henry and kept pulling at the corner of his clothes, calling him uncle. She also said that she hadn't seen him for a long time and missed him very much. She made Henry laugh nonstop and he bought a lot of things for her. After we got home, she held those stationery items and said to me, "Mom, I like Uncle Henry." I paused. In the past, Daphne rarely revealed her preferences directly. She always kept what she liked in her heart. Now she could tell me what she liked. It seemed that leaving Julian was indeed the most correct choice. Another month passed. I saw in the newspaper that Shanghai was preparing for economic development. It suddenly occurred to me that in my previous life, at this time, commercial housing began to be sold in the city. Many people thought that there was no need to buy a house, since they had a dormitory allocated by the unit, so few people bought it. Later, when the economy developed, the price of commercial housing soared, and many people had to queue up to buy a house. I calculated the balance in my savings book. I still had more than 20,000 yuan, which was my savings for 10 years. The houses now were not very expensive. I gritted my teeth and bought a small-sized house without telling anyone. Newspapers about Shanghai's economic development were spread all over the street, and people in the unit also began to discuss it. A colleague asked me, "Isabella, I heard that you just came to Shanghai from the countryside a month ago. How much is the rent of the house you're living in now?" I sensed something strange in his words and asked tentatively, "Don't we all live in the houses provided by the unit?" My colleague smiled. "Where in Shanghai do they provide houses? The unit only gives a housing subsidy of a few yuan a month. Where do you live?" I instinctively looked towards Henry's office. My heart was beating unevenly. I answered numbly, "I live in Puxi district." "Oh, the houses there are expensive. But I heard that Secretary Henry's family used to live there too. You should be quite familiar with each other, right?" I shook my head and kept thinking in my heart. Were we familiar? To be honest, Henry and I aren't really that familiar. At most, we have a superior-subordinate relationship within the same unit. It's possible that because I'm a rare college graduate with a high level of education, he takes a bit more care of me. But no, that doesn't seem to make sense at all. With trepidation, I knocked on the door of his office while holding some documents. Henry smiled slightly and said, "Come in." After I put down the documents and handed them over, I brought up the issue of the house. "Secretary Henry, is the house I'm living in now rented by you for us?" A rare look of surprise flashed across Henry's face, but he didn't seem too surprised that I had learned this news. He kept smiling and looking at the photo frame on the desk. "Isabella, I think you might not remember me. Actually, we went to the same high school." He looked at me seriously and said, "I haven't gotten married all these years because of you. I've always liked you and have been waiting for an opportunity. Now I don't want to just be friends or have a superior-subordinate relationship with you anymore. Could you give me a chance to pursue you?" I didn't give a reply to his words. After picking up Daphne and going home, I was still thinking about what he had said with a lingering fear. Henry has always liked me? That's really a huge joke. I do have an impression that there was a guy named Henry in the class next to mine in high school. But that person seemed to be a chubby boy. He had a timid personality. He came to ask me questions and even said he wanted to go to the same university as me. I patiently explained the questions to him, but I didn't remember his words firmly and just forgot about them after hearing them. I was so lost in thought that I didn't even realize that the food was burning. It was Daphne who told me, "Mom, the food is burnt." I quickly turned off the stove. After a while, the door was knocked. Henry came in carrying a big bag of vegetables and smiled warmly. Did I come at just the right time? I smelled the burnt food outside. I gave an embarrassed smile. My mind was full of what he had said in the afternoon, and I felt a bit awkward just being around him. Henry, however, was different from me. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Let me do it. You sit down and take a rest." I tried to decline, but he seemed to see through me and smiled. "Don't take those words I said in the afternoon to heart. I just want to get closer to you and don't want to cause you any burden." Just as he finished speaking, the door was knocked again. I was glad that I had a reason to avoid replying to him for the moment. But when I opened the door, I found that this reason was actually worse than having no reason at all. Standing outside the door was Julian, whom I hadn't seen for over a month. In the cold winter, he was only wearing a thin coat. Maybe he had been standing outside in the cold wind for a long time, and the cold air around him was as biting as the wind blowing in. In fact, I had seen him several times during this month. But after he harassed me last time, Henry arranged security personnel near the unit, and he couldn't pester me anymore. He looked around the room in a flustered manner. When he saw Henry cooking in a familiar way, he grabbed my wrist with red eyes and asked, "Isabella, stop being angry. I can't stand the days without you. Daphne also needs a father to protect her. How can other men treat her well?" I gave him a cold look and pulled my hand away. "That's none of your business." Julian sighed. After my cold words, he even seemed a bit aggrieved and humble. He said in a low voice, "Come on, stop being angry. Mia has already left, and you won't see her in the alley anymore. Let's go home, okay? I lied to you when I said I got a marriage certificate with her before. I just wanted to see if you cared about me. I know I was wrong about what happened before. I didn't put you and Daphne first. I've reflected on it and thought it through. Come home with me." At the end, his tone was almost pleading. I gave a sarcastic smile. Looking at his lost and dejected appearance, I sneered and said, "What have you thought through? Have you thought through that without me, the old and haggard woman who cooks for you at home, you feel uncomfortable?" "No, Isabella." Julian shook his head, pursed his lips, and it took him a long time to speak with difficulty. "I've thought it through. I love you, and I can't live without you and Daphne." He spoke each word more and more firmly, and there was sincerity in his eyes. But I thought it was ridiculous. I had been waiting for my whole life to hear him say the word love, but now that I didn't love him anymore, he could say it so calmly. "But I don't love you." I stared at him, coldly and a bit in feeling. Julian shed tears, laughing and crying while shaking his head desperately. "How is that possible, Isabella? How can you not love me? You've been with me for 7 years. Don't lie to me. I don't believe it at all. Besides, Daphne must miss me. The child can't live without me." His smile was extremely forced, and it didn't match his appearance at all. Before he could finish speaking, Daphne ran out of the room and stood in front of me, interrupting him. "Daphne doesn't like you either. I don't want you as my father." Julian froze instantly, his smile freezing on his face as he stared blankly at me and Daphne. The hurt on his face was very obvious. After a long while, with that frozen smile still on his face, he squatted down in front of Daphne, opened his arms, and his voice was trembling. "Daphne, don't say that. Dad has come to pick you and Mom up. Please tell Mom to come home with Dad. Dad will buy you new toys, okay?" Daphne hugged my leg tightly and said seriously and firmly, "We don't like you. You go back by yourself, you like Lily and Aunt Mia. You don't like me and Mom at all." I gently patted Daphne, worried that she would cry, but she hugged me tightly and wouldn't let go. The closer Julian got, the tighter she hugged me. Henry stepped forward at the right moment, reached out his hand to Daphne, and smiled. "So, does Daphne like me?" Daphne reached out her hand and threw herself into his arms, saying in a babyish voice, "I like Uncle Henry." Henry raised his eyebrows and looked at Julian. His expression seemed to be showing off. "See? I'm the one they like now. Mr. Julian, if you don't leave, do you want to stay and have dinner with us? But I'm sorry, there's no extra bed for you to sleep in tonight, so you can't stay over." Julian gritted his teeth in hatred, looked at me, and begged in a low voice, almost humbly, "Isabella, come home with me. Don't be like this, okay?" I said coldly, "It's never going to happen. I advise you to leave on your own before I say something even worse. And don't come here again in the future." Julian looked at me deeply and choked out, "I'll go. I'll leave. Don't be angry, Isabella." For 2 consecutive months, Julian didn't appear in front of me again. Since that conversation in the office, Henry has been especially attentive to me. He said he would make me believe that his feelings for me were sincere. I did feel his sincerity. With the help of our colleagues, I got together with him. Not long after, he couldn't wait to propose marriage to me. When we distributed the wedding candies to our colleagues, everyone gave their blessings. Someone even said, I knew that our secretary Henry must have had a crush on you for a long time. He's such a cold person, but he's so warm to you. It's really not normal. That's when I realized that he had always been different to me. When Daphne found out that we were together, she happily hugged me and said, "Mom, am I going to have a dad who likes me?" I was a bit hesitant and didn't know how to answer her. Because of this question, I postponed getting the marriage certificate with Henry for a few days. He also noticed my hesitation and concerns. On the day we decided to get the marriage certificate, he first took me to do a share transfer. This is the share of a supermarket I invested in. Although the dividends are not much now, there will definitely be a lot of money in the future. It's also my guarantee to you and Daphne. I looked at the share transfer agreement in a daze. This share investment was at least 50,000 yuan. It wasn't that there was not much money at all. I understood that this was all his money, and giving it all to me showed all his sincerity. He said sincerely, "Isabella, don't worry. I will definitely treat you and Daphne well." I got the marriage certificate with him. The unit attached great importance to our marriage and even funded us to hold a wedding and invited all the acquaintances in the unit. The wedding day was very lively, and everyone gave us their blessings. I saw Julian's figure again. But this time he was in a more embarrassing state than ever before. He stood not too far away and never stepped into the banquet hall. He stared blankly as I led Daphne towards Henry, standing there like a statue. When he heard Daphne change her address to Henry and call him Dad on the stage and kiss him on the face, he gave a bitter and awkward smile. He walked towards the banquet, but he didn't get close. Leaning against the edge of the door, he stood there quietly until everyone's strange gazes at him became habitual and indifferent. Daphne took my hand and said, "Mom, he's over there and has been staring at us. But we won't say a word to him, and we'll ignore him from now on." After these 2 months I hadn't seen him, but I did find mentions of him in Daphne's diary. She wrote, "That person came to the gate of my school again. I hate him and don't want to see him." The only person Daphne could clearly hate like this was him. I only heard Henry mention it occasionally. He said that Julian had been reported for having an affair during marriage by the school and had been fired. And Mia was driven out of the alley by everyone after being discovered for interfering in other people's marriages. I smiled and squeezed Daphne's hand tightly, then walked towards Henry. "It won't be like that, Daphne. After today, we'll start a new life." The 2 houses I bought in Shanghai indeed appreciated in value very quickly. Henry kept praising me for having good judgment. He paid for all the decoration costs and chose the highest grade furniture. Before long, we moved into the new house. Henry decorated Daphne's room beautifully. It was filled with all the little toys Daphne liked, and there was even a princess bed. Daphne was extremely happy. She exclaimed, "Mom, now Daphne doesn't have to sleep on the floor anymore." I smiled and then tears streamed down my face. After 2 lifetimes, finally, Daphne and I had our own home. Henry was busy cooking. He took 2 steps towards me and wiped away my tears. He smiled and promised me, "From now on, I won't let you suffer anymore." He said that we wouldn't have any more children in the future because education was really time-consuming and effort-consuming, and having only Daphne was enough for us. I understood that he didn't want to put me in a difficult situation, so he simply took the initiative to promise that we wouldn't have more children. Looking at Henry, I realized that the transfer in my previous life wasn't about getting a promotion. It was about meeting the right person. "Okay," I replied with a smile. Suddenly, Daphne jumped up from the bed with a start and shouted loudly, "Dad, the food is burning." Henry let out a flustered oops and smiled as he went to save the food in the pot. After fumbling around for a while, he took off his apron, put one arm around me, and hugged Daphne with the other hand. "Come on, let's eat out today to celebrate." At this moment, the happiness that I had been seeking for 2 lifetimes finally came to me.